This conference will now be recorded.
We have also looked at salary plans, right? Next, we'll talk about compensation steps or compensation grade step. Now, as I mentioned last time, uh, many industries, right, or especially your union jobs, right, your government industries, right, your government employees. Uh, Now, how does uh, the compensation or uh, of a normal employee, a private sector or corporate employee would increase based on the annual merit process, right? So every year we run our employees through this annual merit review process, and then different employees based on their performance, based on company's performance, their existing compensation, their compa ratio, and many other factors which a given company considers, uh, the compensation would increase, right? So for a given employee, it could be 20%, and other employee who is not performing, probably it could be 0%, right? So it depends on the merit uh, of the employee. But then, as I mentioned, many, for example, government employees, your union jobs, uh, there, even without a merit process, employees get their standard increase, right? So, for example, a level one employee, let's assume it is some level one, every year, so even if he's in the same grade or same role, uh, every year or maybe every 2 year, based on their experience, the compensation would automatically change, or their basic salary would automatically increase by X amount, which is predetermined, right, or pre-set up. Now this is something you achieve with the help of your compensation steps, right? So compensation steps, they are defined on a compensation grade, or if you have grade profiles as well, they are defined on the compensation grade profiles within a grade, right? And you define a criteria on your compensation steps, right? For example, your length of service, every 2 years or every 1 year after an employee has spent 1 year in a step, his compensation should automatically increase to the next level, right? Or you can also define it in terms of eligibility criteria or eligibility rules, right? So a compensation step, if I have to define it, is a specific point within a compensation grade or grade profile, right, that is associated with a monetary value, right? So once I've reached a specific step, my compensation amount, my salary amount would automatically change to Y dollars, for example, right? So let me first write that down, and then we'll look at it in the system. So compensation grade steps. Okay, so a step is a specific point in a compensation grade, right? Or grade profile, salary range, right? So ultimately, what I'm defining in a grade or grade profile is a range of salary, right? The actual compensation I get is determined by the associated plans, right, which have been assigned to me. So a step is a specific point in a grade or a grade profile salary range that is associated with a monetary amount, right? So your steps, like your compensation plans, they assign a specific monetary amount to a worker, right? Okay. Now, what we have said is a step is ultimately defined on a grade or a grade profile, right? Now we created a couple of grades, right? One grade did not have any grade profiles, and then we created another compensation grade which had grade profiles. But then none of those two grades that we created, they had any steps associated with them, right? But the way a process works is, so if I assign an employee, and let's call this so if I assign an employee, let's say EMP1, a compensation grade called CG1, right? And let's say this grade doesn't have any grade profile, right? Now system would use the range which has been defined on this grade to define the employee's salary range, right? But then if this grade has steps associated with it, then system would automatically associate this employee with the specific step based on the eligibility criteria, right? Similarly, this grade, let's assume it also has grade profiles in it, then system again makes validates the grade profile which employee is valid for or eligible for, and then within that grade profile assigns him a step, right? So if a grade or a grade profile has steps, system would assign those steps to the employee, right? Okay, so if you assign a grade profile to a worker, right? Uh, Workday uses these steps on the grade profile and not these steps on the grade. So this is exactly the same concept, right? If there are grade profiles defined in a compensation grade, then system would use the steps that have been defined on the compensation grade profile and not the steps on the compensation grade. Okay, so the task for creating your compensation grades is maintain compensation, sorry, the task for creating or defining your compensation steps is maintain compensation steps, right? So okay, so the task is maintain um, so the task is maintain compensation steps, and then within the task I would select a specific grade, right? I would define the date from which I'm maintaining those steps, and then I'll select a grade for which I want to define my steps, right? What was the grade we had created? Uh, I think we had referred to it somewhere. This is our right. So this is our compensation grade. Let me go ahead and select it. All right. Now the first thing, just give me a second. Okay. Now the first thing that I'll have to determine when defining this compensation grade is the salary. Uh, okay, assigned first step during compensation proposal. So if this checkbox is selected, right, whatever compensation grade steps have been defined or grade profile steps have been defined. So in this compensation grade, if you see, there are three grade profiles, right? But then whatever grade or grade profile has been assigned to an employee, right? And within that grade or grade profile, whatever, right, system would assign the first step within that grade or grade profile to an employee when the compensation is proposed for the employee, right? This could be a new employee being hired, right? Or this could be an employee starting an international assignment or an additional job, right? So system would assign the first step of the eligible grade, or if the grade has grade profile as well, grade profile, at the time when the compensation is proposed for the employee, right? So I'll select this. Okay, so the task is maintain compensation steps, and as I mentioned, select the assign first step during compensation proposal, a checkbox to assign the first compensation step to workers associated with their grade or grade profile, for example, when hired, right? Now, what happens when this checkbox is selected, right? So when selected, right, Workday would basically determine a few things, right? The first thing it would determine is if the worker has an eligible compensation grade, right? Obviously, workers should be eligible for the compensation grade, or this particular compensation grade which has grade steps on it, right? Or the grade then has compensation steps. Obviously, the grade should have compensation steps, right? And then it determines the worker either does not have a step, right, assigned, or does not have a step in the grade assigned, right? What it means is, okay, so this worker, he could be a new hire, right? And I'm hiring this employee into this particular compensation grade, right? And the corresponding grade profile, which has compensation steps. Now, this being a new hire, maybe an international assignment or starting a new job, because the worker doesn't have those steps assigned as of now. It is being assigned to the employee for the first time, that grade and grade profile. System would assign the first step within that grade or grade profile, right? Similarly, I'm maybe transferring an employee, right? I'm moving an employee from one grade to another grade, from one grade profile within a given grade to a different grade profile, right? Again, system would check that he doesn't have any steps in that grade assigned, and when it assigns that employee that particular grade or grade profile, it would assign the first step in that grade profile or grade, whatever is available, right? So if all these conditions are met, Workday assigns the first compensation step, right? The worker either doesn't have a step assigned, right, or does not have any step. So he may have a different step in a different grade profile, and I'm moving him to this new grade profile. And when I move him to this new grade profile or grade, whatever is there, then system would assign him the first step within that grade or grade profile, right? So that would only happen if assigned first step during compensation proposal checkbox is selected. Okay, the next thing is your salary plan. So on your grade, you see this option called salary plan. Now when we discussed about compensation steps, we said A compensation step is associated with a specific monetary amount. So unlike grade or grade profiles, which just gives a manager or the person who is proposing compensation a reference range within which his compensation should be given, right? They only tell you what is the minimum that this employee should be getting, what is the maximum. The actual compensation is not defined or given to an employee in terms of those grades or grade steps, right? It is given in terms of different plans that have been assigned to the employee, your salary plans, your other allowances, and so on and so forth. However, because your compensation step it assigns a monetary amount to a worker, we need to define the plan with which that monetary amount would be given, right? And that is why whenever you're defining a compensation step, you'll have to select the associated salary plan, right? So you'll select the salary plan for the employee, and I've selected the salary plan, right? So system lists out all the salary plans which are created in the system, and then you select a salary plan. System would automatically assign him the salary plan, right? And then give him the amount which is associated with that salary plan in that with that step in the salary plan. Okay. Can I override the amount that has been associated with that step, right? So step is $100. Can at the time of proposing the compensation that amount be overridden, right? The default setting is it is not overwritable, right? But then if I select this checkbox, I can specify that the amount can be overwritten. Okay, so in this case, you one more thing, this is not only a salary plan, even though the name says salary pay plan. But what if this employee is a contingent worker, right? Or he has an hourly amount which is paid out to him. So the name, even though it says a salary pay plan, if you see, I can also assign this employee hourly plans, right? So as because they are both forming the basic salary of an employee, right? So I can pay the compensation amount with related to that step in terms of either a salary plan or an hourly plan, right? Only these two plans can be assigned and no other plan types can be assigned on a compensation step. Okay, next if you see, I can define the steps on that particular compensation grade, right? But then again, because this grade is associated with a grade profile, system is going to use the steps on the grade profile. Even if your steps are defined on the grade, system would not use it. So this is exactly similar to our compensation ranges on grade and grade profile. So ultimately, the range which Steve Morgan got was the range which is associated with the grade profile, right? And not the grade. So when grade profiles are there, then the steps at the compensation grade level is completely optional, right? So we can go ahead and skip it if grade profiles are available on that particular compensation grade. Okay, so now this grade has three different grade profiles. It also gives me the range of each of those grade profiles. So the minimum and maximum for this grade profile is 50 to 100,000 uh, US dollars, right? If I scroll to the right, I have this option. When I click on this plus icon, this is where I can define the steps for each of these grade profiles, right? Again, I can select if the steps associated with that grade profile are editable or not, right? For each of these grade profiles, I can select the salary pay plan, right? So again, let's say I have a grade called consultant, and within that I have two grade profiles. Let's say consultant hourly or consultant contractor and consultant employee, right? Now the salary or the pay plan for a contractor would be hourly, and a pay plan for an employee would be salary, right? So again, what is defined at this grade level is just use as for reference if you have grade profiles defined, right? Now, if I do not define anything over here for these salary plans and allow override, in that case system would use the default that has been set at the grade level, right? In our case, all these three employees are all regular employees, consultants in UK and India and US. Then I need not define or select a separate salary plan, right? Okay, so I have clicked on this plus icon. I can define the sequence. Okay, so the sequence, this is my first step, and here I can define the amount within that step, right? So let's say this is the minimum amount in that grade profile. I say the first step employee would be assigned that amount. Times 100,000, right? I'm saying the employee in this particular step within this grade profile, the first amount that he gets, and I'm basically selecting the minimum amount, right? So I'm saying it would be 50,000, right? Now here I need to define what is the interval after which he would progress to the next step, right? So let's say after completing 1 year, right, and I'll select years, then he is eligible for moving to the next step in the sequence, right? Now this is the minimum duration. After he's completed this duration, let's say I want to select any other progression rule as well, right, based on any of the compensation eligibility criteria that I've defined, right? So maybe I want to select only after completing 1 years, and if his age is 30, then he should move to the next level. Then system checks the interval first and sees if this employee has completed this interval in this particular step, and if employee has completed that, then it would check the associated progression rule, and if that rule is also met, then system would progress that employee to the next step, right? But then this progression rule is completely optional. So in my case, uh, an employee, the moment he completes 1 year, he is automatically eligible for moving to the next level, right? So I need not specify an additional progression rule, right? Similarly, maybe in my next, and I'll select it as 2, and then maybe my employee automatically moves to 70,000, right, after spending the next 2 years. And then my step number 3, and maybe employee moves to 90,000 after again complete maintaining 2 years, and maybe after completing another 2 years, he then moves to the next level, right? So this is how, and then I can define the steps rules for the next compensation grade profile as well.
Will this happen automatically or
Yeah,
some
we'll
BP
talk
needs to be
about
triggered?
yeah. Well, there's a report. There are some automatically step progression schedules you need to run, and we'll talk about that, right? So we'll talk about all those aspects. Okay, I need to give a name as well. Let's call this third step, and this is our fourth step. Okay, guys, we need to define this salary plan value as well. So here, I'm defining this. Okay, so now I have defined my compensation grade within that grade profile, and for one of those grade profiles I have also defined the compensation steps, right? As I mentioned, every step you would define the interval, right? The step progression interval, and system would progress that employee to the next step if the interval criteria is met, but also if progression rule is specified. Then after interval criteria is met, then system checks if this progression schedule is also being is eligible, and then system would move that person to the next step, right? How it moves, we'll talk about in a bit. Okay, let me write that down. So what was the first thing? Salary pay plan, right? So here we select or define the salary or hourly plan to be associated with the steps, right? Uh, allow override uh, select this checkbox to allow override of the step values, right, in a specific workers compensation package. Okay, what else did we look at? We spoke about sequence that is pretty straightforward. Your step progression would happen in the sequence that has been defined, right? The name of the compensation step, the monetary amount that is associated with that step, the interval, and the progression rule. So interval and period, right? And as I mentioned, it defines the length of time that workers must remain in the step, right, before progressing to the next step in the grade or grade profile, right? So this is the minimum amount of time that employees should spend in that particular step, right? And after they have completed the minimum amount of time, that's when system would check the associated progression rule to progress that employee to the next level. And if the progression rule is not defined, as we have seen here, then system would just progress them after they have completed the minimum amount. So progression rule, right? So you select an eligibility rule that Workday uses to progress the employee, right? And as I mentioned, this could be anything. For example, you want the age of the employee to be minimum 30 years before he can move to the next level, right? So even if an employee joined this step, let's say as 26, and he completes 1 year when he's completed 27, but then system would still wait till the employee reaches 30 years to progress him to the next level, right? This could be age, this could be your overall length of service, or anything, right? This could be a job profile, basically anything with which you can define your eligibility criteria. So if you see here, when I selected it, the drop down or the prompt, it was ultimately a compensation eligibility rule, right? And we know that we can create any kind of compensation eligibility rules, right? Having said that, we have also seen that this is an optional setting. If I don't want progression rule, that is fine. System would only consider the interval and time period for progressing the employee. Okay, so as I mentioned, when workers compensation is proposed, right, and they match the eligibility rule on the grade or the grade profile, right, then Workday uses the values associated with the steps on the grade or grade profile. Okay, the problem is, I think there's an issue. Let me quickly check. I've tried to sort this out. I was not able to. So guys, this, and since you guys have experience in security, if you guys have an answer for this, I think so. Earlier, mm, so if I request compensation change, perform. There is compensation. Will Okay, here I have. All right, if you see, there's this option called steps. Now this grade and this grade profile doesn't have a step associated with it, right? And that is why it says no items available, right? Okay, what I'll do is, I think, okay, this is working fine. It was not earlier. I think I have hired a few employees in the past. Let's see from what date this employee is hired. Uh, Job details. He's hired effective uh, 9 to 2019, right? So which means he's already completed 1 year now, right? What I'll do is I'll go to compensation and request compensation change. I'll assign him compensation from this date. Okay. For now, what I'll do is the grade I created. Don't worry about what I'm doing now. I am just to show you. What was the compensation package of? Uh, let's take this one. So again, don't worry about what I'm doing now. Just wanted to show you how this looks like, how compensation steps. Uh, okay. So at this point in time, this employee is not eligible for our compensation grade, and I'm not sure if he's eligible based on the package as well. But then I just wanted to show you how this works. I'm just assigning him anything. Ideally, when you hire an employee, system would automatically, based on the eligibility criteria, default all of these, right? So the whole purpose of designing your eligibility criteria is that these are all pre-filled, right? Because there could be thousands of grades, grade profiles in a system, right? And it is not always possible to for a person to know which grade this employee should be assigned, right? So the whole purpose of building your eligibility rules is that the grade and grade profiles in the package should be pre-filled when the compensation is initiated for an employee, right? But then that is fine. So here I'm assigning him to this grade profile, and within that grade profile I'm assigning him to this step. And it says the progression start date is 3/2/2000. From what date am I assigning? Okay, I'll do it from 2019 because that way so 1/1/2019. Okay, when was the employee hired? Sorry guys, he's hired on, oh, he's hired on September, guys. I'll pick some other employee who's hired before this date, because that way I'll be able to show you the progression schedule or how the automatic progression works. I think this is the employee who is hired from hired date is 2020. Okay, what I'll do is I'll hire an employee in which ways. Staffing earliest hire date is 2010. Uh, business process. Added restrictions. Okay, so I'll quickly update the hiring restrictions on process. Sorry. Organization edit hiring restrictions. So I'll select 2010 and enter an availability rate. Oh, okay. Let me select. Let's look at another supervisory organization. I think this is sales. I'll change it to organization. Okay, so now organization, I'll set hiring restrictions. I'll select 1/1/2010, 1/1/2010. job profile. Let's select job profile as 1720 consultant, location as London, time type as full-time, worker type employee, and regular. Okay. Submit. Done. Okay, so now we have hiring restrictions defined. I'll quickly hire an employee. What I'll do is I would BP hire hire for what is our supervisory structure. Uh, okay, let me edit this. Okay, I think I've already used this to initiate. It will not allow me to do that because there's already a business process. Okay, I'll add one more step, propose compensation higher. Right, and I would send it to, I think there are no security groups configured as of now, but any which ways, let's me send it to HR partner. Okay, now I can hire an employee in the sales supervisory organization, right? And then we'll see how those compensation steps. So now let me hire an employee. I'm going to hire him effective 1/1/2010, right? And submit. Okay, so the next step is propose compensation higher. The task is reassign task, wherein we can assign it is, so this is not routed to anyone. Why is that? I do not get to see. Uh, why is that? Mm, this is strange. Why is that? I don't see any. Uh, propose compensation higher. Higher. So this task is unassigned. It is not assigned to anyone, which means I mm, you got any clues as to why it doesn't show up? Okay, in which was I was hoping that I would club them all together. What I'll do is I'll cancel this, I'll edit the business process, and I would do the normal request compensation change. Maybe Logan McNeil, our user doesn't have those authorizations. And 13th Feb. Okay, we'll do a request compensation change, guys, separately. Let me remove this proposed compensation higher. 1/1/2010, and then submit. Okay, so now we have hired a new employee. I'll do a normal request compensation change for the employee. Request compensation change. I want to do it effective 1/1/2010, right? The package was, I think, management compensation package, if I'm not wrong, right? The grade is, what is our grade? It is consultant, and within that grade, what is the grade profile? USA, and first step, and I assign. Now what I'll do is, if you see, system has, the moment I selected that package and that grade and grade profile, the amount for that step is 50,000, and the plan that is associated with that particular step or that grade profile is 611 salary plan, and system has automatically assigned him that salary plan. And the amount as well, if you see, is 50,000. Now can I change it? No, I'll not be able to change it, right? Because on here I have selected that this cannot be overwritten, right? So system based on the step assignment, right, has automatically assigned him. Now as I mentioned, this purpose of selecting this checkbox is that system should automatically run that eligibility rules, and system would automatically assign him the right compensation package, grade profile, and within that profile, the first step, right? But in this case, our employee is not eligible for any one of these, right? I have manually selected them. But then in a live environment, based on the eligibility criteria that have been defined, system would automatically default all these options. So it would automatically default the package for an employee. Within that package, it would automatically default the grade profile, and within that profile, system would check that this is the checkbox selected, and there are steps on that grade profile. So system would assign that person the first step within that grade profile, right? And then assign him the amount associated with that grade profile, right, using the corresponding salary or hourly plan. Okay, any questions? I think let me quickly check. Any questions till now?
No.
Okay. So there are many other options we'll talk about. The first question you asked me, how does system move this employee to the next step? right? So we'll see that. We'll see what if, so after 2 years, now you re, based on, let's say, the uh, after 2 years, obviously the salary ranges are going to change, right? Now my first step, instead of 50,000, I want to change it to, let's say, 55,000, and then 70 to 75, and then 90 to, let's assume, 95, and this becomes 110. Now, what happens for all those employees who are already assigned those steps? So there's some employee who's already assigned, let's say, this step wherein he's getting 70,000. So how does system adjust the amount for the employees who are already assigned to that step, right? So we'll talk about the adjustments to the compensation steps, right? We'll look at the automatic step progression and how those schedules work and how those schedules run. Okay, I'm not going to submit this. Let me quickly check if there are any approvals in the uh, if there are approvals, then I'll cancel this and resubmit it. Okay, if you see there are quite a few approvals, so what I'll do is I'll uh, quickly copy the request compensation change business process definition as well. uh, Compensation, sorry, business process. So I'll copy this, request compensation change, copy existing definition, uh, and then submit. All right, so okay, so what I've done is I have copied this definition, and now I'll go ahead and reinitiate this for this employee, else it will go for all those approvals, right? Okay, now I'll initiate that compensation change request. Right, so the reason I'm doing this from 1/1/2010 is because that way, because we have defined these intervals, time periods. So if I just hire an employee for 2020, then these intervals would not be fulfilled, right? And then our step progression schedules will not be able to test them. And that is why I hired a new employee from 2010, right? Uh, okay, I think management was the one. Management compensation package, and this is our grade. Let me quickly copy that, uh, and then within that, grade profile, and within that grade profile, I'm going to assign my employee first step. As I mentioned, this is something I'm doing manually, and the moment I say okay, system automatically assigns him the salary plan. And then if we want, we can assign other plans as well, allowance and hourly and or any other plans. And then I'm going to just submit. So if you see, this forms the basic salary of the employee, right? And I'm going to submit this request. Reason, I have to select the reason. uh, okay, because this is request compensation change, conversion, I'll just select conversion as the reason. Okay, so now if I look at our employee's profile and go to his compensation details, uh, this is the step that has been assigned to the employee. This is the corresponding plan that has been assigned to the employee. right? Okay, any questions today?
No.
All right. Okay. So as I mentioned, tomorrow we'll look at the step adjustments. We'll talk about the automatic step progression schedule, and then we'll talk about a few different aspects of employee compensation management. Okay. So I would stop here, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I'm sorry I had to cancel yesterday's class. I'm not well for more than a week now, uh, and don't know. All right, fine. Thank you, guys. Have a good day. We'll talk again tomorrow.